So one question I get asked a lot is, why did you go to law school? What made you go to law school? What was the motivation, and how did that process work out for you? So, the story is that, I'm a non-traditional law student, right? I didn't go from high school, right out of high school, go to college, and then right out of college, go into law school. Out of high school, I enlisted in the Army. I got out of the Army. Went to work in the plants like a lot of people do. Had a family, had two kids. And at some point I woke up and said, you know what? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to be working shift work and missing birthdays and holidays and working nights for the rest of my life. I want to do something different. And what I've always wanted to do was be a lawyer. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to go be a lawyer. Of course, everybody looked at me like I was crazy, and they're like, yeah, sure you are. That's what you're going to do. This is a phase. It'll pass, whatever. So I'd make a commitment, and I go to Brazosport College, and I'm sitting in the waiting room. I make an appointment with the counselor, and my counselor, his name is Phil, and he comes out and greets me and says, hey, come on back to the office. And so I follow him back to the office. And he says, you must be here for the welding program. And I was like, no, sir. He's like, well, you must be here then for the air conditioning repair program. It's really good. And I was like, no, sir. He's like, well, what are you here for? And I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And he didn't really know how to take me, whether I was being serious or not. And so he said, well, to be a lawyer, you got to get an undergraduate degree first, right? 4-year degree. And I was like, yes, sir. And he said, well, do you have any college credits at all? And I was like, no, sir, I don't. He's like, so you got a long way to go. And I was like, I sure do. I'm ready to get started. So Phil asked me, he said, well, have you taken the ACT? No, sir. You taken the SAT? No. When's the last time you had a math class? And I was like, well, probably like 1984. He's like, oh, man. He's like, well, we're going to have to put you in these classes. And these classes are going to tell us how to place you. And I was like, I don't need those classes. Like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, I don't need to do that. I need to get started. It's like, well, we've got to put you in these classes to figure out, where we're going to be able to place you. And I was like, okay, do I get credit for these classes? And he's like, no, you don't get credit for these classes. I was like, so you're asking me to take fundamental, like special ed classes so you'll know if I'm smart enough? He's like, yeah, pretty much. So I said, okay, well, let's get started. So I took my first two, placement courses, one in English and then one in for math. So they needed to know if I could read, write, and add and subtract. So that first semester, everything in the English class went really well. I probably didn't need that, but math had totally changed. Not that I was ever good at it to begin with. So I get out of that semester and feels like, look, I got good news and I got bad news. Like, as far as getting into every other class but math, we're gonna put you in credited classes, but you're gonna have to take one more semester of the sort of the conditioning program for math. And I was like, okay, but I want to take 6 classes. He's like, you can't take 6 classes. You'll fail. And I was like, I won't fail, and I want to take 6 classes. He said, you can't take 6 classes. I said, okay, well, how many classes can I take? He said, I'll let you take 3 classes that are credited in your math class. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So that's what I did. And that semester I made all A's and was ready to go. So I go back into Phil's office after that semester. He said, I've got good news for you. You're ready to go into college algebra now. So we just need to get your schedule. You did really well. You're on track. And I was like, okay, I want to take 6 classes. He's like, you can't take 6 classes. You'll fail. And I was like, I won't fail. I need to get to law school. He's like, no, you'll fail. I said, well, how many classes can I take? He said, I want you to take 4 classes, one of them being college algebra. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I got through that semester and I made 3 A's and 1 B being the math class. And I figured that was pretty good, considering that I really didn't even know how to use a calculator, which they make you buy because we didn't have calculators in high school. So after that semester, I sort of put my foot down and I told Phil, I was like, look, I'm on a plan, I have a schedule, and I need to get out of here so that I can get into law school. And for me to do that, I've got to take 6 classes. And he's like, okay, well, here's a piece of paper that I'm telling you that you're going to fail. And so I signed the piece of paper, and I actually took 6 classes with a lab. So I took 19 hours at that third semester. That was a ridiculously stupid thing to do. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was taking these classes, like I would go to baseball games or wherever we were, to family. I'd have my books, I would have whatever. It was stupid. I was up till 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I told myself I would never do that again. I should have listened to Phil. But I got out of that. I did very well that semester, and I was sort of on my way from that point. So after that, I had to go to another school. I had to get my bachelor's degree, and I was looking at places to go and where I should go. I was actually working in Clear Lake at the time, so University of Houston, Clear Lake made really good sense to me. And I found out that I could take like a class at lunch. Like if I took an hour and a half lunch, I could go to class. So I did that. And so when I go there, they're like, well, what do you want to major in? I said, I don't know. I'm going to be a lawyer. What do lawyers major in? They're like, well, we have this pre-law track. I said, well, that's what I want. Had one class with even the word law in it for the whole time I was there. But it was pretty good because I sort of took an interesting track. I was in Bachelor of Arts with history with a lot of mythology, which I really loved. Took a lot of hours while I was there. Ended up counting Brazosport and U of H, graduating with my bachelor's degree in 3 years. And I ended up graduating from the University of Houston Clear Lake with a 3.95 GPA and magna cum laude. So I felt like, hey, that was really, really good. I was like geared up for law school. All I had to do now, I had to take the LSAT test, to the law school aptitude test, which actually probably should stand for the ludicrously stupid ass test, because absolutely nothing on that test has to do with the practice of law, but whatever. So I studied for that thing, and I couldn't make a lot of sense of it when I started. It was ridiculous. So I took the LSAT test, and still don't know what I scored to this day. I couldn't tell you. But so I took the LSAT test, and now I had to look at law schools. Really, there were only 2 law schools that were going to be available to me, and that was the University of Houston and South Texas College of Law. I was still working. I had my kids. It's not like I could go off to school. So really, really liked South Texas. It was a great school, and they really teach practical experience on how to be a lawyer. And so I was really happy about that. And I said, I'm going to go to South Texas, right? This is where I'm going to go to law school. So I applied, and I got accepted. And I will tell you that your first semester of your first year of law school is no joke. It's like trying to chew, 10 pounds of bubble gum all at one time. It's not hard. There's just so much of it. And so I was just putting my head down, going to school, still working, having my kids. Like I had 3 full-time everything, right? School, work, kids. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm like, hey, I'm going to get through this first semester. I feel like I'm doing really well. And so I get close to the end, and it's right for my first semester ever of law school exams. Like you hear about them, people tell you about them, but you really can't prepare for how ridiculously, insanely difficult they are. So I'm just like studying all the time. I was at work then. I had started working, moved to an office in Angleton. And so my law school track was I had my exams on Tuesdays and Thursdays of the law school exam week. So I'm sitting in my office on Monday, like I just stayed there because it was quiet, and I'm studying, and I had my books open, and I hear this knock at the door, and I was like, who the hell could that be, because we're closed. So I get up and I go to the door, and it's this lady standing there, and I was like, what the hell? So I open the door, she hands me this envelope, and she's like, you've been served. And I was like, what the crap? So I opened this envelope up, And the first thing I read is, "You've been sued." All right, so not even 24 hours before I'm supposed to sit for my first law school exam, I get served with divorce papers. I go back into my office, I put them on the table, I'm looking at these papers, I'm looking at my books, I'm looking at the papers, I'm looking at my books. I call my buddy up and I was like, he goes, "Oh, you don't want to take these exams, because if you fail, they're going to kick you out of law school. Like, you won't even be able to reapply for like 2 years." So I'm sitting there thinking about this, like, where am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to get to my exams? What am I going to do? What do I have to wear? All of these things. And I was like, you know what? So I took those papers and I just pushed them aside. I got back into my books, spent the night at the office, got up the next morning, like I slept in my chair, felt terrible. Stopped in at Walmart, got me a toothbrush, got me some stuff, and went to South Texas, and I sat for my exams. Ended up making the dean's list that semester, so I knew that there was nothing that I couldn't do in law school at that point. That I would always be able to handle those days, and there was nothing that was going to happen to me that was going to be too hard for me. And so that's just how I approached law school every day. At the end, in law school kind of flew by, right? It just flew by. And at the end, you graduate and you're like, "Oh man, I've graduated law school. I'm so happy." But it's not the end, because now they tell you about this little exam you have to take to even be a lawyer, the bar exam. And oh, by the way, if you don't pass the bar exam, you have to keep retaking it. And if you don't pass it, you don't get to practice law. So everything you've just done for the last 7.5 years of your life, all the dedication, all the sacrifice, everything that you've worked for is just gone. So I started studying for the bar. I kind of ramped up. About a month before the bar, it was just insane. Just concentration. 2 weeks before the bar, I didn't leave the house. Like, I took off work, I didn't leave the house. There were like Hot Pocket wrappers and candy wrappers and fast food bags, like in this circle, all at arm's length from my coffee table, because I didn't move from that place. And a buddy of mine, Justin Ballard, he and I decided we're going to take the bar exam in Austin, Texas, because we want to go get away from the noise, and we want to go up there and take the bar exam, and we did. So the bar exam is a 3-day test, and you hear stories about it, and it's like, how difficult could this be? It's got to be made up. There's too many people that practice law. It can't be that tough. It is no joke. It is ridiculous. So the first day we go in, and it's a little bit easy, right? So you walk out of that first day, or at least I did, and I was like, man, this is no problem. Like, I've aced this whole thing. I've passed the bar. I'm good. Let's sit back, go drink some beers, whatever. Didn't do that, but that was a feeling. The second day we go in, and Justin and I are talking, and it's like, that was a little harder than yesterday. Like, that was pretty tough. I'm not sure, how many points I got out of today. I think maybe I did okay, but I'm not sure. The third day, I was absolutely 100% sure that I'd failed the bar exam. I was just sure of it. There was no way I had passed it. There's no way I did well enough. I had failed. I was never going to be a lawyer. I wasted this better part of a decade in going to law school. I was done. I was a failure. It was over. That's how I felt. Like, I was just in this state of depression because I knew I'd failed the bar exam. What's even worse about that is the bar doesn't give you your test like that day or the next day or the next week. They make you suffer for months before they actually give you your results. So I just had to live with that I had failed the bar and I was never going to be a lawyer, and it was horrible. And so one day I'd kind of put everything out of my mind. I knew the bar, the results were going to be out at some point. I'd kind of forgotten when they were supposed to be. I'm driving down the road and I get this call from a very good friend of mine, Wanda Morrow. And I didn't think anything about it. I just figured she was calling. She's an assistant dean at South Texas. We'd been good friends, still are. And so I pick up the phone and said, "Hey, what's up?" She goes, "Oh my God, congratulations." I didn't. It did not. I swear to you, it did not hit me. And I was like, "For what?" She goes, "You passed the bar, you idiot." And I was like, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, the scores are up. You didn't know that?" And I was like, "No, I had no idea." And so, my thing the whole time was like, I think the passing scores is 600 or something like that. I was like, if I get a 600, I'm gonna be happy. If I get a 601, I'm like gonna be freaking ecstatic, like we're going on vacation or something. So I pulled my bar score up, and I actually did much better than I had anticipated that I would. To this day, I cannot tell you what my score was, though. I have no idea what it was, other than it was a lot better than I thought it was, and it was above a 600. So I knew that I had passed. It was at that point that, I still had to be sworn in and all of that stuff, but it was at that point that I was like, I did it. Like, I'm a lawyer. I somehow I got from 7 years ago to having to take fundamental math and not even being allowed in junior college to I'm a lawyer. And so I guess that's sort of how I approach my practice now, is that there's nothing that can't be overcome. There's nothing that can't be done. And that was just through sheer perseverance. People doubting me, people saying, well, okay, it's a fad, that'll never happen, and continually pushing through. So that's how I started. That's how I got through law school. That's how I ended up where I am, and still what I carry forward in my practice and how I represent my clients is with that same determination and that same fortitude and that same thing, that nothing that happens today is going to be too difficult. So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate you letting me share that story with you, and we'll see you next time.